Hello everyone, good morning. Sorry, good evening. Sharing my screen. So we've done the Saas to on-premise service with the help of a connectivity agent yesterday. So let's pick up the next integration. It's Salesforce to ERP Cloud Automation. We discussed this use case briefly in our demo session itself, right? Or the initial demo session. So there are plenty of customers out there who use Salesforce as their main CRM system. And they also use ERP cloud to manage their ERP operations. And what does a client going to do? A client is going to create a customer in Salesforce as and when they get a new customer, the business user would create a customer account in Salesforce. And the expectation is that the same customer should be created in ERP cloud ASAP with absolutely no time gap. And yes, to achieve, so this is just one integration. There could be plenty of other integrations required between the two systems for the information to flow back and forth. But how do we achieve this sample use cases like this one? First of all, how many accounts we need for this integration use case? We need ERP cloud application. We have it. We have access to the Fusion Cloud instance. And we also need a Salesforce account. I can share my Salesforce account with you guys. But the problem is if you try to log into my Salesforce account from a different region or from a different IP, Salesforce would send an OTP to my mobile. Okay, so every time you want to practice this integration, you cannot reach me on my mobile, right? So for that reason, what I usually encourage students to do is, if you can just spare 2 minutes of your time, you can create a new Salesforce account, new free Salesforce account for yourself, which would work for 1 year. And don't go to Google and type in create a free Salesforce account. You just have to click on this particular link. And when you click on this link, you can skip the verification. It would basically take you to a sign up page. So you can get yourself a new free Salesforce account, which would work for 1 year for free. And the good thing is you don't even have to plug in your credit card details. See, unlike an AWS account or Azure or OCI account, Salesforce doesn't force you to enter your credit card details. You just have to spare 2 minutes of your time, enter your ID information, email address, job role, company. If you don't want to disclose it, just mark it as not applicable. Country, email address should be a valid one because activation email is going to be sent to this. And you need to remember the username that you enter here. So enter valid details here or working email address and do remember the username that you plug in here. So our recommendation is to use the email address itself as username so that there won't be any confusion. And you just say, I agree and click on sign me up. As soon as you enter the details, click on sign me up. Immediately, an activation email would be sent to this particular email address. An activation email would be sent to this email address. And that would have an email. Sorry, that would have the username. And in that email, activation email, you would see a link to click and activate your account. So when you click on that activation link, you would be prompted to set the password. You would be prompted to set the password for yourself. So this is going to be your username and the password you're going to set when you hit the activation link on this particular email after you click on sign me up. Okay, as soon as you activate your account, what's going to happen? So after you activate your account, how do you log into it? Again, you don't go to Google and search for a login page or login link. You can just use the link given in a third slide in the PPT. So you just have to use this login link to get into it. Okay. Just give me one moment, guys. So I'm going to log into a Salesforce account with my credentials. So before you get your password, what is the step number one for you? You need to create a new account for yourself, enter a working email, remember the username, activate the account by logging into that email address, and that would prompt you to set the password. So this is going to be the username and the password that you set. You need to enter those two details here, the Salesforce username and password. And as soon as you sign in, remember, I'm trying to log into Salesforce as a developer. I'm trying to log into Salesforce as a developer. So meaning when you log in, you would be taken to a setup screen directly. So instead of going into Sales Cloud or Marketing Cloud screens, instead of going to the application screens, it would take you to a setup screen because we were logging into the application as a developer here. Now, what's the requirement, guys? First of all, let's go to the requirement. So the requirement is as soon as the customer is created in Salesforce. So when you go into Sales Console, you go to the home page. This is a page you get to see when you are going to a Sales Console. And to create a new account, you click on the drop down, select the accounts here, and this is where you create a new customer account. So whenever your client gets a new customer, this is what they're going to do. They come into this particular screen, a business user on the client side, and they would enter the customer details. Say, for example, if it is John, yes, you enter the customer details here. And yes, the client is also going to enter the address details, etc. And then they would hit the save button. And the moment they hit the moment a client hits a save button here, expectation is that this particular customer should be created in Fusion Cloud application ASAP. So as soon as they save the customer in Salesforce, what is it that the business user wants to do next? They want to log into Fusion Cloud application and they want to create an AR invoice against the customer. Okay, so they go into receivables and they want to create an invoice against the customer. And for them to create an invoice against the customer, first of all, they should be able to see the customer created in ERP Cloud. Because the customer should have been created here, a customer should have been created in ERP Cloud. Only then you will be able to see that customer in the dropdown. Okay. So what is the requirement? As soon as a customer account is saved in Salesforce here, we need to create that customer account in the manage customer screen. So you need to go into manage customers. So that particular customer with whatever details customer is entered here, with those details, the customer needs to be created in ERP Cloud. That's a use case. Now to achieve this use case, we need to split it into two parts. So the first thing is we need to do some setups. So what exactly user is going to do? They're not going to perform any other action, guys. They just enter the customer details here and they hit the save button. They just hit the save button. They're not going to do anything else in this screen. So we need to do some process automation on the Salesforce side so that an integration in OIC gets triggered as soon as we hit the save button. So when I got this use case, what did I do? I went to a Salesforce technical team. I had a couple of hours call with them to understand what options exist to automate a business flow, or is there any option to automate a process flow in Salesforce? So when I spoke to the technical team, so they told me that yes, we can design a process automation flow in Salesforce. So let's wait for the screen to log in. Yeah, we have an option to define a process automation flow. So if you scroll down, you see process automation under settings, and we have an option to create a new flow here. We have an option to create a new process automation flow. So you can create a new flow here and you can give it a name. So you need to mention how you want the flow to be triggered. Do you want it to be triggered based on something happening on the screen? Do you want it to be triggered based on a schedule? Or do you want it to be triggered without any, do you want the flow to be auto-launched, meaning no explicit trigger? Or do you want to trigger a flow whenever a specific record is created or updated or deleted? This is the one that we are interested in because whenever a new customer account is saved or an existing account is updated, we want a flow to be triggered. We want a flow to be triggered. So I'm going to say record triggered flow created. And I need to select the account object here because I want this flow to be triggered whenever account is created or updated. Whenever account is created or updated, I want the flow to be triggered. And I can plug in a filter condition here. So if you don't plug in any filter condition here, what would happen, guys? If you leave the filter condition as blank, what would happen? Any customer account which is saved here, so that customer will be, all the customers will be sent over to ERP. But if you want to plug in some filter, say for example, if client says, Prasad, only the customers whose account number starts with 5 or 500 series. Okay, so client might say, Prasad, only the clients or customer accounts whose number starts with 500 series should be sent over to ERP. Okay, in such case, what do we need to do? Not all the customers, only the customers whose account number starts with 500 series should be sent over to ERP. So we say none. We select all conditions are met here. And we say account number starts with, and we're going to say 500. And I can add as many conditions as I want, and I can change the operators to and or here. So you can basically apply a filter here, which would restrict or which would control what customers are created in Salesforce should be sent over to ERP Cloud. Okay. So we don't need this anymore. I can just go ahead and say none here, which means all the customers created in Salesforce will be sent over to ERP. And what actions do I want to perform? Yes, I want to perform an action. As soon as this flow is triggered, we need to give it a name. So I say send customer account to ERP flow. Click on save. And as soon as you save this flow, let's go back. I think it should have already been saved. So you could see that the customer account is created or updated. And as soon as the customer account is created or updated, what exactly do we want to do? So we can, again, Salesforce technical team has told me that these are the actions that we can perform. So if you scroll down here, you could see workflow actions here. And these are the actions that we can perform whenever a process flow is triggered. What are those actions, guys? I can send an email to someone. I can update a field in Salesforce if I want, or I can send an outbound message, or I can send an outbound message. So what exactly it means? It means that I can, so I can send a message from Salesforce to outside world. So outbound message means when you create an outbound message, in that outbound message, you need to plug in an, you can plug in an integration endpoint URL that needs to be triggered. So outbound message is what exactly we are looking for. So create an outbound message, and that outbound message is what you're going to call from this process flow. So let's create a new one. And again, this outbound message is going to be based on account object, and you say UG63 send account to ERP message. And this is where you need to mention what integration needs to be triggered. So you need to mention the integration endpoint URL. But did we create an integration in OIC yet, guys? No, right? We haven't done it yet. So what I'm going to do is I would plug in a temporary URL here for now. And so in Salesforce here, we need to mention which of these customer fields need to be passed as input to this integration. Okay, so I'm creating an outbound message here. This is going to be called from a flow, and the flow would be triggered whenever an account is created. So the moment you save this flow would be triggered, and from the flow, I'm going to call this outbound message. So the integration would be triggered. And which of these customer fields, so you see, these are all the customer fields that we have. So which of these customer fields do you want to pass as input to the integration? So I'm going to select all of them, and I'll move it to the selected fields list. I go ahead and save it. Now, the moment you select a list of fields here, whatever fields that you want to send to ERP Cloud, okay, so you selected what fields you want to send as input to this temporary URL. And this dummy URL that you see here, so we're going to replace this with actual integration endpoint URL. And what is important is with whatever fields that you have selected here, which you want to send as input to this integration, with these fields, an abstract WSDL file would have been generated. With these fields, an abstract WSDL file would have been generated. The reason for this abstract WSDL file is, remember, there are I could have selected 100 fields or 50 fields here, right? From Salesforce, I could have selected 50 fields or 100 fields to be passed as input to integration. And I'm going to build an integration in OIC now. And in that integration, I need to catch these 50 fields in the trigger connection. I need to receive them in the trigger connection. How do I do it? That's exactly why Oracle has generated a WSDL abstract. Sorry, Salesforce has generated an abstract WSDL file here. So you click on this WSDL and you can copy this entire WSDL definition. So you see the definitions here. So in this WSDL file, you should not copy the first line. You should not copy the first line and you should not copy the comments here. So you need to copy the remaining definition. So whatever path you have, starting from definitions tab, you need to copy this content. You're going to put it in a text line and you can save it. Send accounts to ERP. Or I can just say accounts.xml or accounts.wsdl file. Okay. Now we're going to use this WSDL file as a starting point in our integration. So we need to build an integration in OIC. And in that integration, I'm going to use this abstract WSDL file as a starting point. I'm going to use this abstract WSDL file as a starting point. So we're done with the setups that we need on a Salesforce side. So, and there's one last step here. I need to search for UG63 message that I have created, outbound message here. So since I created that message after I got into the flow, we're not seeing that message here. So you just come out of the flow and go back in again. And within the flow, you can search for UG63 for the outbound message that we have selected. And I'm going to save that. So you save the flow. And after we save the flow, what exactly are we going to do? We save this flow. So as and when a new customer account is saved now, as and when new customer account is saved, so this flow would be triggered automatically. Okay, as and when a customer account is created or updated, this flow would be triggered. And from the flow, this outbound message would be called. Outbound message will be called. And in this outbound message, what is the logic that we have? We are going to plug in our integration in OIC URL here, OIC integration URL. So the integration in OIC will be triggered and all these customer details will be passed as input to it. Now we are left with the second half. In the second half, what is it that we need to do? We need to go to OIC, build an integration there to receive when we receive these customer details from Salesforce. And in the integration, we need to plug in logic to create a customer in ERP Cloud. So we go into Salesforce, we log into OIC instance. And you would go into projects, UG63. Uh, I don't think this connection is working. So we need to change it to EUDU. Going to update the connection. And while the connection is getting updated, we'll go back to UG63 again. So we need two connections, guys. We need ERP connection, and we are updating it here. And apart from ERP connection, what else do we need, guys? We also need a Salesforce connection, right? So we need to pick up a Salesforce adapter here, create a Salesforce connection, leave it as trigger and invoke. Now, with what details do we need to create a Salesforce connection, guys? I've given it in the PPT here. So if you go to slide number 12, you would be able to see the details. So you need to select the role as production here. You need to select the role as production, not sandbox or government. And you need to select the API version as 49. So these are the two options that you need to select. So if you ask Prasad, where do we get this information from? If you search for Salesforce adapter in OIC, from that documentation, every adapter in OIC has a separate documentation. 3 to 4 page PDF is published by Oracle, and there you find that information. So you need to select it as production 49, and here we need to enter the OIC instance username and password. Sorry, Salesforce username and password. Now I'll open up my Salesforce connection notes. So here, this is my Salesforce username. And this is my Salesforce password. Now, this is what you normally do. So you select this production 49, enter your Salesforce username and password. So anybody would do the same thing because it says username and password. You go ahead and test it. But what you will notice is when you try to connect to Salesforce from outside of the Salesforce application. So if you try to connect to Salesforce application from outside of it, you need to pass in a security token. You need to pass in security token. Okay. So login must use security token. So what does it say? It says when accessing Salesforce, either via desktop client or API, you must add a security token to your password to log in. So to this password, I need to add a security token. I cannot just enter a password here. To that password, I need to enter a security token. Now, the next question that you ask is, Prasad, where do we get this token from? Right? And this last statement answers it. From your personal settings. So if you go back into Salesforce application, okay. So from your personal settings here, from the personal settings, so click on the username and click on the settings. That's a personal settings. And after you click on a personal settings, you would be shown a personal information page. And right below that personal information page, you will be able to see reset my security token option. So right below the personal information tab, you see reset my security token. So we have one. So normally when you create a new Salesforce account, you would receive a security token in email automatically, guys. But just in case you don't receive it, you come into this particular tab and you hit this button. And as soon as you hit this button, what would happen, guys? You would receive a security token in an email. And how is that security token going to look like, guys? It's going to look something like this. It's going to look something like this. It's a pretty long string, uppercase, lowercase characters, digits. Now, what you need to enter as a OIC connection password is your Salesforce password plus your security token. And there should be no space or no underscore in between, guys. It's just a concatenated string that we need. So you copy this entire string and you need to go ahead and put this in the connection here. Now, if you test the connection, it would go through. Go back and save it. So we need two connections and we have both the connections now. So this connection is also tested now. ERP connection, we save this. Okay. You see the connection status has changed to configured here. So we need two connections and we have both of them now. And we need to go ahead and create a new integration now. And let me also go ahead and refresh metadata. So we need to create a new integration now. So let's create a new integration. And we need to use app-driven orchestration style because this integration is going to be triggered by Salesforce application. So I would say Salesforce ERP service. Created. Now, what's the first thing that we need to configure? We need to configure Salesforce connection as a trigger. And whatever customer details you have, whatever customer details are entered here. So those customer details would be received. First of all, when you save this outbound flow, from the outbound flow, we are calling this outbound message. Sorry, from the process automation flow, we are calling this outbound message. And here I would plug in that integration URL. So we have all these fields passed as input here. Okay, so from here, this integration will be triggered and we need to receive customer details from Salesforce. We need to receive customer details from Salesforce, continue. And from the Salesforce, so in the Salesforce, you have outbound message. In the Salesforce, you have outbound message here, right? And this outbound message is what you mentioned here, outbound messaging. And you have instructions here as to, you have instructions given here as to how to generate that WSDL file. So what does it say? It says that you go into Salesforce account, go to setup outbound message, select an object, and you plug in a dummy URL so that the WSDL file gets generated. And isn't this the same steps that we have done, guys? It's the exact same steps that we have done here. So we went to the action, outbound message, we entered a dummy URL and we selected the fields and that gave us a WSDL file. Now I need to just upload that abstract WSDL file here. I just need to update that abstract WSDL file. I just need to update that abstract WSDL file. Okay. And what else? What are the instructions that you see here? It says that Prasad, after you activate this integration, you take that integration endpoint URL, take out that question mark WSDL from the metadata URL. So there would be, when I activate this integration, there would be a metadata URL generated. And from that metadata URL, I need to take out the WSDL URL and I need to update this in the outbound message dummy URL. So at the moment you have dummy URL, right? I need to replace this with this integration endpoint URL. And we're going to do that anyways. So it's just that OIC is trying to let you know what you need to do. Now I'll change the layout to horizontal. Now what do we need to do, guys? Yes, this integration will be triggered from here, and we're going to receive customer details as input. Now comes the tricky part. So we need to plug in logic here to create a customer in ERP Cloud, to create a customer in ERP Cloud. Remember, guys, to create a customer in ERP Cloud, I'm not sure how many of you know this. Customer follows a TCA architecture. Customer in ERP Cloud follows a TCA architecture, trading community architecture. So what it means is, what it means is, yes, there is no one single service that you invoke and it would create a customer account for you. So yes, there is a customer account service, but if you and remember, these are the SOAP services that we need to call, and these are the operations that we need to call within them. And when we call these services, yes, we need to configure inputs. We get the output, and the output of one service needs to be passed as input to another one. Now, the way so when I build this integration, guys, it took me almost 3 to 4 working days to work out this design. Because figuring out what you need to do in the integration is going to take 80% of your time. Because if you know what services you need to call, what operations within them, and what is the input payload and what is the output payload, building integration is 1 hour job. Building integration is just 1 hour job. Okay, so this is where if you have a little bit of prior EBS experience or ERP cloud experience, it would come handy. Otherwise, you would work closely with a Fusion technical consultant. Now, when I did this POC, guys, I was directly hitting this customer account service, and I'm is with an assumption that this is going to create a customer account at an account site. But when I hit this service, it said me, Prasad, you need to create a party and a party site. Remember, guys, we cannot directly create a customer account and an account site in ERP Cloud. For a customer account and an account site to be created, we need to have a party and a party site registered. Okay, so we need to have an organization. We need to register the customer as an organization, meaning a party and a party site needs to be created for the customer. So the customer account will get linked to a party. Customer account site will get linked to a party site. Customer account site will get linked to a party site. And remember the party site ID. For a party to be created, you just have to mention your information, the party information. That's fine. But for a party site to be created, we need to have a location or address attached to it. Okay, so because when I hit this organization service, it said party got created, but not the site. Site has thrown an error saying that we need to attach a location to it. So that's when I realized that there is a location service that we need to call first. And this service is going to register a location in ERP Cloud and give us back a location ID. So to work out all this design, I had to spend almost like 2 to 3 days in support.oracle.com. Okay, so if you go in there and search for a string like, remember, I know the expectation, right? It's pretty clear. So we are going to receive one customer at a time here. I need to create a customer in ERP. So I went to support.oracle.com and I searched for a string like this, create customer in ERP Cloud using web services. And I had to club the nodes from 2 or 3 meta-link nodes to come up with this design. So first we need to call this location service. And we're going to pass in this address details as input. We're going to pass in this address details as input here so that it would register a location in ERP, give you back a location ID. And then you call the organization service, you pass in the customer details as input, and along with it, you pass in the location ID as input. So what would happen? Organization service is going to create a party and a party site. Organization service is going to create a party and a party site. And after the party and party site is created, what do we need to do? We need to hit the customer account service. And this customer account service, to this customer account service, you need to pass in party ID and party site ID as input. And this service is going to create a customer account and an account site. And a site usage as well. And this is our end goal. So for account and account site, we need party and a party site. And for party site, we need location. So we have to hit 3 services, these operations within them to achieve our end goal. And these 3 are standard SOAP services given by Oracle, guys, which means at least we can save the effort from creating in separate invoke connections. We can just invoke all these SOAP services, standard SOAP services given by Oracle with ERP cloud connection itself. And from here onwards, I've given two slides for every service. I've given two slides for every service. So the first slide tells you which service to invoke and what operation within it. So which service and what operation. And the second slide tells you what are the mappings that you need to do. So let's go ahead and do this. I'm going to use that ERP service. And I would say create location. I'm going to select CRUD operations. And you select source services. And we need to select process location operation. So why process location? Because I want the location to be updated if it exists, or a create if it doesn't exist. So I don't want to always create a location, because if a location already exists, I want it to be updated. So I'm just asking OIC to go to EUDU instance and create a location there. And what it's going to do, it's going to create a location in ERP cloud. And for that, it asks me, Prasad, tell me with what address you want the location to be created. So we need to map the address details here. So let me explain the mappings that we need to do, guys. First of all, since we are doing a process location operation here, so we're not using create location, it's process location. So we need to mention a change operation here as merge with M in capital letters. Now, what does a merge means, guys? Merge means it will do an upsert operation. So if the location already exists, it would update it. Otherwise, it would insert it. Okay, so change operation is going to be merge. And we have the address details mapped here. We have the address details mapped. And whatever address details that we received, billing country, billing street, postal code, I'm going to map it. And I will come to this created by module. So there's this one attribute called created by module here. When you hit this service for the first time, the location service, you would definitely miss this mapping, guys. Because obviously this is not a mandatory mapping, and how would anybody guess that we need to pass a value for this? I also missed this one. So when you try to hit the location service, leaving this blank, what would happen? Leaving this blank, what would happen? If you leave this blank, you would get an error immediately saying that created by module is mandatory. Now, when you get that error created by module is mandatory, when you search in support.oracle.com for that error saying that created by module is mandatory, so you would get a meta link note which says, Prasad, there is a created by module. Created by module is basically a lookup in ERP cloud. And in that lookup, you have some seeded entries, including headset_WS. So apart from these seeded entries that you have in a lookup called created by module, you can add additional entries as well there. So if you want to use the seeded value given by Oracle, you can directly use a value as headset_WS. So this is basically a lookup in ERP where you already have some seeded entries given by Oracle like headset_WS. Why headset underscore, guys? Because all TCA table starts with headset parties, headset cust accounts, headset locations, everything starts with headset_. And since we are creating this location with the help of web services, we call it as headset_WS. And in process control, we say partial failure allowed. Remember, this is a mandatory attribute and we can mention it as true or false. In this case, it doesn't really matter whether you pass it as true or false because it's only one location that we are mapping. But remember, let's say that you are building another integration, maybe a WMS REST API, where you receive 100 locations as input from WMS system, and you're basically passing those locations as input to this. Remember, it is a repeating row, right? You're going to map that repeating row as well, and you pass in 100 locations as input. In such case, if a 8th location or a 9th location fails, do you want to proceed with the next location or not? Are partial failures allowed? Is what is going to be determined by this particular flag. So if partial failure allowed is passed as true, what does it mean, guys? It means that even if if multiple locations are passed, if multiple locations are passed as input, and if one of them errors up, then still the service will proceed further and create other locations. So I can pass it as true or false here, doesn't really matter because it's only one location that we are mapping. So let's do this mappings, guys. I'm going to XSLT and I say change operation. And I'm going to call it as merge M in capital letters and process control. I can pass it as true, partial failure allowed. And we need to map the address details. If you look at the payload we received from Salesforce, you can map the address details from here. Billing country. Billing postal code. And I can map the billing street to address 1. And I'm going to map the billing street to address 2 as well. So in this way, you just have to map the address details. And what else do we need to map, guys? We also need to map that created by module. As headset underscore WS. Validated. Go back and save it. So this service is going to create a location. And with that location ID, I want to hit the organization service. So what service do we need to call next? Organization service, process organization. So we need to select the organization service here. And we need to select process organization here. We need to do the mappings as well. And let me explain the mappings that we need to do. First of all, change operation is equal to merge, partial failure equal to true. The same story that I explained earlier holds good here. And this organization service is going to create a party and a party site. And at the party level, we don't need to pass anything. We just have to pass in created by module. At each level, we have created by module, which we have to pass as headset underscore WS. And at a party level, we only need to pass in the organization profile information. Here we're passing in the organization name as input. Okay, whatever customer name we receive from Salesforce, we're going to pass it as input here. Remember, guys, when I hit these services, I would be mapping only the bare minimum fields required for a party and a party site to be created. There are a lot of other fields that you can map from Salesforce as input to the party and a party site. But in the interest of time, I'm mapping in only the mandatory fields. And for a party site to be created, we need to pass in location ID. So the location, a service that we invoked earlier would give you back a response. And in this response, you have a location ID. And yes, after the party and a party site is created, remember party and a party sites gets created in ERP Cloud, even when supplier is created. The TCA architecture is not just used by customers in ERP guys, it is also used by suppliers as well. So which means when you create a party and a party site, we also need to mention or define the usage for it, a party usage. So after I create a party and a party site, I need to define a usage for it. And I'm going to call it as, I'm going to define the party usage code as customer here. Party usage code as customer. And I would set the created by module as headset underscore WS. So this service is going to register a party and a party site with a usage code as customer. So when I define a party usage code as customer here, so this is me telling a Fusion application that, boss, I'm registering a party and a party site here, and I intend to use this particular party as a customer. So in the next screen, when I create a customer account, I'm going to map that party ID here. So I'm going to, for that particular party, I'm going to create a customer account in the next step. Okay, so we need to define a party, party site, and the party usage code. Let's do that mapping. I just need to map the created by module here. And if we go to the organization profile, you go to organization profile. Here we need to here we need to pass in the customer account name. We need to pass in the customer account name here. And we also need to pass in the created by module. And we want the party site to be created. And for party site to be created, we need to pass in location ID as input. That's it underscore WS. And we also need to define a party usage assignment as well. Here we need to mention the party usage code as customer. Be careful with the spelling. And we also need to mention the created by module as headset underscore WS. We go back and we save this. So this service is going to, yes, we're going to receive the customer details. We would register a location here. We would create a party at a party site here. And what's the last step? The last step is to create a customer account and an account site. So you select customer account, and I'm going to select it as merge customer account here. Merge customer account operation. And we need to go ahead and do the mappings. And what are the mappings that we need to do for this one? Remember, guys, this service is going to create a customer account and an account site. So the customer site would get linked to a party, account site will get linked to a party site. So when we call this organization service, we get a response, right? So from the response, we map the party ID here, party site ID here. And yes, we need to map the created by module at each level. I'll come to set ID in a moment. So we're going to create a customer account and an account site, link it to party ID and party site ID created by module. And we also need to define a site usage as well. So when you define a site, you need to mention how you intend to use that particular site. Is it that you just want to receive invoice on that particular site, or you also want to receive the goods as well? So you need to mention the site usage code as either bill to or ship to. So if you mention the site usage code as bill to, what does it mean? It means that customer would not like to receive any goods in here. It's not a ship to site. You just have to maximum can send an invoice in there. So when you create this customer as a bill to, I mean, if you define a usage code as for the account side as bill to here, which means you can use that particular customer in an account creation screen or in the invoice creation screen as a bill to customer. And we need to mention the created by module as it's set up underscore WS. Now I'll come to set ID in a moment. Remember guys, at the customer account level, we can map the customer. We have an account number field as well. So if you want the account in ERP Cloud to be created with the same account number as entered in a Salesforce, so whatever account number is entered in Salesforce, if you want the customer account to be created in ERP Cloud with the same account number, then apart from these mappings at the account level, you also have you also have a customer account field, sorry, the account number field. Okay, so you have to do this mapping. So you need to map the value for this particular field. Whatever account number you receive from Salesforce, you have to map it here. If you don't map it, what would happen? It would still work. The integration will still go through, but the account number will be auto-generated. Account number will be auto-generated. Okay. And apart from all these mappings, whenever a customer account site is created, remember, we need to mention a reference data set here. Whenever a customer account site is created, we need to mention a reference data set here. So you can mention a reference data set code or a reference data set ID. You can mention a reference data set code or a reference data set ID. So what does this RDS means, guys? So this basically controls in what all business units you can create invoices against this customer. So in what all BUs you can use this customer to create invoices. That would be controlled by the reference data set. So you can either map the set code, reference data set code or reference data set ID. This is not a valid value, guys. Don't use the value given in the snapshot here. You can either use this set ID or you can use this set code. So when I create an account site, if I assign it to a US1 business unit set, what does it mean? It means that I can create invoices against this customer in US1 business unit set. If I assign it to India BU set, then what does it mean? I can create invoices against this customer in India business unit. Oh, that's how it works. So you can go into this particular screen, then you can go in the screen. We can add in a created by module. So here, let's go ahead and do this mappings first. You map the party ID. Mention the created by module as headset underscore WS. And we also need to map the customer account number. Whatever is the account number we receive from Salesforce, we want the account to be created in ERP Cloud with the same account number that is entered in Salesforce. So you do this mapping as well. And we need to map the account site. So for account site to be created, we need to pass in the party site ID. So if you look at the organization service response, you get a party site ID. So you have a party site created here. And that party site ID is what you pass as input here. And this party site ID is what you pass as input here. And we pass in created by module as header underscore WS. And we also need to map, we can map either a set ID or a set code. So you can map the set code as US1 business unit set if you want, or you can also map the set ID. So I will map the set ID, and I'll also tell you where you can get this set ID or a set code from in Fusion Cloud application. I'm hard coding this value, but you can get it from a lookup so that you don't have to change the integration when you promote it. So I'm assigning a set ID as 1965. This corresponds to US1 BU set. And there's one last field that we have to map. Party site ID created by module and set ID. Yeah. Go ahead and validate it. I save this. Enable tracking. Then select account name and account number as tracking identifiers. And we just have to activate the integration. And once you activate it, there would be an endpoint URL generated. And once this endpoint URL is generated, there's just one last step that we need to do, guys, before we test the integration. We need to go to this outbound message. We need to go to the outbound message, edit it, and in this outbound message, we have a dummy URL at the moment. Here I need to plug in the integration endpoint URL. So you could see that there is a visitor URL generated for this. So from this visitor URL, what we need to do was we need to copy that visitor URL, paste it in here, and take out question mark visitor at the end. Ensure that you take out question mark visitor at the end, guys. Go ahead and save this so that what would happen now? And this outbound message, I have our integration endpoint URL, and these fields will be sent as input. And that outbound message would be called here from this outbound flow. And I need to activate this activate this flow. So what would happen now? As and when I go ahead and create a customer account here, as and when I create a customer account, this flow would be triggered. And from the flow, this outbound message will be triggered. And from the outbound message, this integration will be triggered in OIC. And to that integration, the customer details will be passed as input. And this integration will create a customer in ERP Cloud. So let's do that final test. And with what details you need to create a customer, I have entered the details here. So I'm going to say UG63. I'm going to call it as UG63 account created in Salesforce. So this is a customer account number. And in the billing street, I'm going to enter the address details here as UG63 billing street. And I'm going to enter the postal code here. And the billing country, I'm going to enter it as SG, which means Singapore. So I've entered the customer details and I'm entering the address details as well here. and I go ahead and hit the save button. The moment you save the customer, what would happen? The flow, and from the flow, the outbound message should be triggered. And from the outbound message, this integration should have been called. Now, where do we know, how do we know if the integration is called or not? If you go into observability integrations, you should be able to see that integration triggered automatically. Nobody has done anything here. It's triggered automatically. And in this integration, we have logic to create a location, organization, and a customer account as well. So all the steps are executed successfully. So which means with what account number I created a customer, this account number. So I can copy this account number and I can go into ERP cloud and I search for the customer here with that account number. Now we'll be able to see that there is a party created, party site registered, customer account, and an account site. And to the account site, this account site is attached to US1 business unit set. Because we have used that set ID there. And if you click on this account site, you would also be able to see the bill to usage defined as well. So if you scroll down, okay, I think I probably missed the site usage mapping here. So when we did the mapping, I think we missed the site usage mapping. So when you do this integration, guys, when you do the mapping for this one, do the site usage mapping as well. Mention it as site use code bill to, so that what would happen? There would be a bill to site usage defined. Okay, so this is how it's going to get created. So bill to site usage would also get created. If you go ahead and do this mapping as well at the site use level, if you map the site use code as bill to, it would get created like this one. So you have a site defined with a primary usage as bill to, and whatever address that you have mentioned in the Salesforce screen. So with that address, a location is also created. Now, why is it that you are seeing UG63 Billing Street in two fields here, guys, in the address? You see Singapore postal code and the address line here. The reason why you're seeing the address line, sorry, the billing street in two fields is it is mapped to those two fields. So if you go to the location service, if you go to the location service here, so we map the billing street to address 1 and address 2. So that is why the location is created twice. Okay, so sorry, the billing street is appearing in two fields here. Any questions, guys? So when you do this mapping, or when you do this integration, don't forget to do the site use code mapping as well, so that a build to also gets created. Now, where do you get this set ID from, guys? So in Fusion Cloud application, there's one table that you need to hit. So if you go into tools, reports and analytics, there's one table called F&D set ID sets table. So if you hit this table in Fusion Cloud, it's going to give you all the reference data sets. So that reference data set is going to basically control in what all business units you can create invoices against that customer. So you can create a data model. You would be able to see the reference data sets here. So what is the reference data set that we used? So this is a set ID that I have used. So 1965, and that corresponds to US1 BU set. So which means, so since I'm assigning the account side to this particular set, so the transaction is going to get created in that US1. So you can create transactions against this particular account site in US1 BU. So if I've probably used this one, I could have created invoices against the customer in UK business unit and so on. Okay, any questions, guys, from anyone on this integration?
Why the fault handling is not mandatory in this one? Because I remember when we did the AP invoice thing, correct? Fault handling was mandatory before we test it out.
Fault handling is not mandatory anywhere, but
Okay.
we need to, as a best practice, As soon as you cross a trigger connection, you have to do the fault handling in every integration. You need to handle the faults at a scope level, and you also need to handle the fault at a global level as well.
Global.
Yeah, that is for sure.
Okay.
Any other questions, guys, from anyone? Okay. Vishal, I've replied to your email. Looks like my teammate has tested that integration. And when he tested that integration, it went through successfully. Can you try it one more time and let me know?
Sure, Prasad.
Yeah.
But only one question, Prasad, that when we loop through the file, correct, the temporary directory, that is, we don't need to reset it, correct,
You don't
by
need,
any chance?
you don't need to. It should get
Okay,
immediately. Yeah.
okay. I will test it again, Prasad. Thank you.
Thank